Well, hello, this is Dr. Chris Lemmon, and I'm actually doing this special video because I've had a lot of questions in this process that I'm going through this year. And the question I'm getting a lot is that I'm promoting an idea of doing short meditations and asking a question to find a better question and not an answer. And a lot of people come back and say, you don't believe in long meditations, you don't believe in spiritual practice, blah, blah. Eh, Okay. I'm setting up a protocol for a particular reason. So let me see if I can explain it a little bit. Have I had experience with long meditation? Yeah, most certainly. When I got into college, I spent a little over 3 years doing lots and lots of Buddhist style meditations. Week long, no food, no talking, 10 hours a day. Uh, and I did a lot of those. My motivation was not to become spiritually involved or ascended master or something. I was working on a concept of health. And so I was really looking at it saying, am I stuck with challenges that were health wise? And can I get out of that? And so I was looking for clues. So I guess from the very beginning, I wasn't looking at developing some amazing awareness of some state of being. I was really just seeking questions and answers. And so that's where my footprint came. After those years in that, what I found out was that, let me see if I can explain it this way. Um, when Buddha put the idea together, there was like eight different states. And so a state is you look at things a certain way. You ingratiate a phenomena or potential to become, and you look at that and see it a certain sort of way. Each state has a different view of what that potential would be. It looks a certain way. So a lot of times on one particular state, you see lots of problems. The answer to those problems is in the next state up. And when you evolve up to the next state, then that becomes clear. And now there's a whole new genre of questions. And it is stairs up, especially the first 4 to 5 levels. Most certainly, I say levels that states. What we found out down through the years, uh, it's been thousands of years. This has been going on for thousands of years, right? Uh, Way back. And what's happening is that evolution has always been part of the planet, but there wasn't as many moving pieces. So each piece evolves into more complexity. And over time, over those thousands of years, we've seen more and more complexity come into play. So that complexity is referred to as structure. So Eastern traditions kind of get away from they stay with the states and they spend more time looking for them. They work with someone to develop a better relationship with them, and that growth is consistent. It's a good job. It's fine if that's what you want to do, and I don't see a problem with it. Um, but then as the structure comes into play, more in the Western culture, we're looking at structure because we pay a lot of attention to structure, right? We are always building something, tearing something apart, doing something different, and sometimes nonsensical. But we're struggling to solve a problem, and if we just wait a little while, there's a good chance that it would resolve itself. Yeah, it's really kind of hard to say. But my background was in psychology, so I would have people come in and they were more plagued with not arriving at a, a greater spiritual awareness. They were plagued with little nemesis of unconscious activities. They would get angry, they would drink too much, they would eat too much, they would get mad or they get frustrated or they disappear and no one saw them, they got left out, or everybody kept putting demand on them, or they just all the above, right? There's a huge list and every human out there has had their share of these complete pieces, right? And this is what they would come to a therapist for, is to be able to work through their difficulties in relating to other people on the planet. And so then we're coming to find a better spiritual view where they can just, go live in a cave somewhere and whatever. They're really looking at how do we improve ourselves? How do we get along better? So from that viewpoint, then I started putting together a program saying, wow, I was working with people on one-on-one, and then I got into HR departments and startups, and I started training people, and I started seeing patterns of consistency of problems that people couldn't get, and I started studying that and defining that more and more for myself. And I started realizing they're not asking really good questions. They come in, they ask questions, I answer the questions, and then they make a lot of mistakes because they forgot to ask other questions. So my focus got turned around from years and years of work experience. I'm over 80 years old now, so I've been doing this for a long time. So when I put this program together that we're in the midst of this year is because next year I want to look at levels of abstraction, first and second and third level abstraction, a different way to look at moving the structure pieces around and being able to see if we can refine more into it. So if you're interested in a spiritual awakening and all those, there are a lot of, I've got probably 20, 25 books myself in my library, which I've read many times. I like Robert Keating. I like Roger Walsh. I like Evelyn Underhill. Uh, I've got a book here by Ken Wilber. And the only reason I'm referencing that, Ken Wilber likes to take all of the material from all the different ideologies, the philosophies, and bring them all together. And he spent 45, 50 years of his life doing those type of meditations. So he has a lot of experience and he's trying to integrate more. So he started with 8 different states and now he's looking at potentially maybe even as many as 16 states, maybe, right? So it's a developing piece because of the complexity and structure. So it's got reminds me of a story always. Um, I had a guy that came to me and he wanted a house on the beach. And where he built his house, there was a street. And then on the other side of the street, there was a sandy area. And then down there was a beach and the ocean. So at the time, no building was allowed on the ocean side of the street. So he bought a piece of land on the non-ocean side of the street, built his big, beautiful house that he loved. He then, everywhere from his house, he could see the ocean and he loved it, right? And then 4 or 5 years later, the city decided that they could allow houses on the other side of the street, but restricted depth, not as deep, so that it would not affect the beach, but it would secure the houses. So here he is, happy with his house, and as someone builds a house, it's only one story, but they're still across the street from him. So he cannot see the ocean unless he goes up to the second story in his house to the bedroom and looks out the window. And so he is already frustrated with all of that. And then he came to me because he was mad and angry and didn't know what to do and wanted to sue someone, didn't know who to sue. And the guy was legally bought the land and built the house. The codes had changed. So we sat with it a little bit, and I said, what you need to do is sell your house that no longer has an ocean view, but it's a really nice house. And I know that you've had it for around 8 years, and I know you're going to make money on it. And then buy the land right next to the guy who's across from you and build a one-story house and make it kind of a U shape so that everywhere on the backside of the house you have ocean view. Look to the right or left, and all you're going to see is your building standing out. It's going to be a narrow floor plan, but it's wider lots, narrower. So you can build that wide place and you can have a view of the ocean from every room in your house. It's a big improvement. You won't have a second story. But at some point in life, you could be glad to have not have a second story. You got to run up and down all the time. So think about that. Well, we sat down, we chatted it out, and he was able to do that. So he was able to work with the structure that came up that blocked his goal in life to see the ocean. That was his spiritual quest, right? And and now we all of a sudden were able to bring that into fruition for him again by moving around the structure that gets involved. So that's kind of what I'm doing here in my background in my field. All of my life, I had to work with people who would come into a business or to a job and they were looking for some potential, making more money, being happier, being able to pay their bills, whatever their dream was. Um, and I then had to work with them so they could see it in a different light because there was always something in front of them. And then they were always frustrated or failing or even quitting because they couldn't get through the obstacles involved. And it and I did this for a lot of years. So I could tell millions of stories, but I'm trying to reduce the story. Right. So when we look, what I found for the most part, when I did all these years of it, I finally started playing with some of the higher states. I don't know where I got it. It's just a story anyway. But when I started to arrive at some epiphanies, I then went to the person that was teaching me and I was working with. I went to them and I'm talking to them, and they said, because I had moved past some of the lower levels and had accomplished some higher levels or higher states, he said, we're now in a place where probably you're now part of less than 5% of the population of the planet. And I go, wow. So if I stay with this for another 10 years, I could get really good at this, but I would only have the ability to communicate on this level with somewhere around 5% of the population on the planet. Like, wow. Hmm. So that's when I decided, okay, I'm working on health. I kind of found out a lot of answers for myself. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my training in psychology, and I'm going to go ahead and see if I can work on the structure, the house that got built in front of you. You have to then readjust, make changes so you can back to that amazing view or that epiphany or that spiritual enlightened peace that you might have got from staring at the ocean or being able to, I don't know what all the above. So what I've got for, um, I'm just looking at the first four or five. The first, the way to look at this perhaps is to be able to say, when we come into form, the potential for us integrates not only a stream of potential for us to become something, but it also allows for us to be embodied in it. So when we come into play, we just have the first state that we're sitting in is food in, food out, right? Pretty much as a baby, that's, no food, waste going. Um, so when there's a dysfunction or structure in a way, then you wind up with allergies or uh, reactions to things, rashes, et cetera, et cetera. So there's structure that can come in and block that or get in the way of that. When you start to get into the second level, that's pretty much sexual, meaning sexual identity. Which gender do you have? Which already we can see there is a lot of confusion on the planet. And then we can also look at the magical mystical, and there's also a lot of confusion on the planet too. Once again, on that particular level, you'll see angels and guides and mystical stuff and fairy tales. It's like a day at Disneyland, with characters running around with big ears and in parades. Those aren't necessarily reality, but they're most certainly a potential. So when you start to see those potentials and interact, you can get stuck in those potentials. We've all know people that have had sexual addictions or sexual concepts or come back and had concepts about spirit guides or people who are invaded by space aliens or whatever. I'm not saying those aren't true. I'm saying they're phenomena that you can see, potential phenomena you could see the potential of. When you get up to the next level, that changes. And so then the next level is all of a sudden causal. So now, guess what? Now you're looking at what caused that. So you're spending all your time in conspiracy theories and YouTube trying to figure out who caused what and what's going on. Do you get this? And it's all causal. Nobody has an answer at all. Everybody has bits and pieces. They're throwing pieces out. Well, this happened, so I assume this happened, so I assume this happened, maybe this happened, and now they got a story. But once again, nothing in there. And then the next level up is what powers it. And then we start to get people in their growth of like, it's all about power, or it's all about getting in the right person, or getting connected to the right people, or if I want to make this happen. and then it becomes power relationship. Those first four levels also build your body. So they bring your body into structure. So they bring all those elements, the element of your sexual identity, the element of your ability to eat food and get nutrition out of it, the element of you being able to relate to other people, chit chat with other people, be able to explain what caused something, what didn't cause something, how those kind of ideas, and be able to get to a point where you can come up and kind of realize that you don't have to overpower someone. You can actually develop a kind of a plan or a scheme or a methodology. You can think about things. You can develop skill sets that allow you to have a bigger imagined piece. And so those are the basic steps that we see the bulk of the people in. And all of them that come to me had some level of dysfunction in one of those four levels in the body. And that would mean a physical challenge. And maybe on the fifth level, that just means an attitude challenge, right? Frustration with what's going on or wondering why they never get acknowledged, et cetera, et cetera. There's a plethora of techniques and terminology and names for all these things. There would be hours and hours going on. Once again, I recommended just on states, Ken Wilber's book, and that's over 650 pages. So you could go through that and see what states are available, what you would experience to view from that state, and what the dysfunctions could be from that state and how they affect it. You could get yourself up into that category of less than 5% of the people on the planet. And that's all fine to just, pick up somebody's email address so you have someone to chat with. Uh, but anyway, that's where it's at. So this is why my platform was put together a little differently when I started teaching. I had people come in that had all kinds of challenges. I try to get them into a state of being able to be relaxed and be able to get calm and be able to address what's going on for them. And then we would do exercises, techniques that will allow them to start to adjust for that structure. Like my friend with the house that sold his dream house, 2 stories with the ocean view, and wound up with a 1 story house with a better ocean view and closer to the ocean and all the above. So he didn't see an opportunity for improvement. He thought he had made his wisest decision, but it turned out there was another step of growth for him to develop. And so that was my whole game, and my game with the work that we're doing now, and my game for the work we're going to be doing in 2027 if I'm still around. And that is being able to see how can we move the structure around a little bit so that we don't have so much stuff, because the world's got complex and evolution doesn't stop. It goes slow, but it doesn't stop. So we ignore it for years. How long did we argue and ignore climate change? And now all of a sudden, come on, think back into the 90s, right? Before 2000. And there was a big argument. Climate change don't exist, blah, blah, blah. And now today we're seeing things that are really anomalies, at least phenomena that we humans may not have experienced because we've only been around for a few thousand years. And so so changes are occurring. And as it's getting more and more complex, we really need to start to look at like the structure is going to get more complex. And that's why I changed my focus. I want to be able to whittle into them that complexity and see if we can imagine a path for us to accomplish greater things. Okay, so if that made some sense. No, I don't have any problem with meditations. And if you're doing some type of meditations, I really like Tibetan style meditations, but I've done a little bit of all the above. Ken Wilber most certainly has done. I think I have all of his books. Um, I really enjoy, like I said before, Roger Keating, um, and and uh, and and so Robert Keating, and I've got all his books. Um, Pretty much, I have quite a few books that are entitled "The Evolving Self," uh, and they're really kind of about states and state changes. So if this answers your question. It's a little different direction. It's a little different platform. There's just a lot of speed bumps that we have right now, and I think it's worth taking and addressing the speed bumps today so that you can have more fluid movement. And then you can then start to spend more time in meditation, being able to look at what is available for you. What what are the pathways or the mapping to some mystical potential to arrive at something else that you could dream of? And of course, you have to remember that when you go through all those levels and you spend a few years as a witness and you get to non-dual, and then you find that what? It's like it's just all potential. It's just all potential, right? So it's like, wow. So we're in a game of potential. So there's lots of ways to get to a potential imagined peace. And that is to either spend the work looking for the view, searching for it in the states, or cleaning some of the structure out of the way so we can move through those states a little easier. All right. So enough of me rambling on. And so if that helps some of the people, I'm going to go ahead and post it on my website so that it will show up as answer to a question. And I had several emails from it, so I think this is probably the best way to answer those. So if I can find the off button. So thank you very much, and we'll chat soon.